This year has been an amazing year for video games, not just for big AAA titles that everybody rushes out to grab, but also for smaller indie games. Now, we've talked about the Xbox One, we've talked about the Switch, well now it's time for the PS4 to take a turn as we talk about the best PS4 games that you can grab for 20 bucks and under. And we're going to start off with a game called Night in the Woods. Night in the Woods is a fairly classic style adventure game, but with a lower focus on problem solving and a bigger emphasis on exploration and dialogue. You'll spend most of the game exploring a small town and talking to its inhabitants, learning about their personalities, their histories, and relationships with one another. Also, everyone is some kind of animal, which can be a little weird at times. Now, the game starts off fairly tame and straightforward with its plot line. You're a character named May, you've just come back to your hometown after a few years at college, and you're experiencing how things have changed while you've been gone. But as you get further and further into the game, things start to get a lot weirder and much more bizarre than things started out as. Now, if you're the kind of person that has a little trouble focusing on games that are this narrative heavy, the good news is it also throws in a number of different small mini games that breaks up the pacing and are actually surprisingly really good for being such small additions. It's fun, it's weird, and sometimes the plot can hit a little close to home. Night in the Woods is definitely worth checking out. Now, narrative-heavy games are all well and good, but sometimes you just want a fun, cheap game that lets you blow stuff up and see lots of pretty colors. And that's exactly the point of Nex Machina. Now, Nex Machina falls under the same kind of pattern, but instead of being a side-scrolling shooter where you're flying a ship, it instead follows more in the lines like something like Geometry Wars, where it's a twin-stick shooter where you run around aiming in different directions using the right stick. Now, the structure of this game is very simple. There's no story mode or anything complex like that. It's just a fun, old-fashioned arcade-style game where you're running from level to level blowing stuff up. And it gets surprisingly difficult at times because there is so much different things you have to juggle and pay attention to. You're not only shooting and destroying enemies, but you're making sure to keep your distance from them. There are human civilians that you have to save from the enemies before they can reach them, lasers you have to dash through, all kinds of crazy stuff all happening on this beautifully presented world. When you need a game that's just simple fun that you can jump in and out of without having to worry about where you were in the story or what's going on, Nex Machina is the perfect game to fill in those shoes, especially for the kind of person addicted to getting high scores. Now, next I actually want to talk about two games because there's a lot they both have in common. They're both 15 bucks, they're both HD remasters of classic Sony games, they're both rhythm games, albeit very different ones, and they're both so delightfully weird. And that's Parappa the Rapper and Patapon. Now, for those of you that have only heard of it or have never really played it before, Parappa the Rapper is a classic PS1 game, which is a very simple rhythm game. All you have to do is hit the right buttons at the right time displayed up above, all while watching and listening to really bizarre rap videos about baking cakes or how to drive properly. Meanwhile, with Patapon, you're basically this drum god thing that these little one-eyed creatures worship, and you command them by entering the right drum beats with the right timing. So you're constantly having to maintain the same kind of tempo while issuing different commands like square, 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 circle to move forward, or circle, circle, square, circle to attack. Now, one thing that is really weird about both these titles is that while they are very good looking during gameplay as part of the HD remaster, the HD remaster only actually redid those gameplay parts. All the different cutscenes and things in between are still in outdated old resolutions, which can be really jarring when you're switching between those and the gameplay. Despite that though, it does nothing to detract from just how fun and addicting both of these titles can be. Honestly, if you've never played either of them, pick them both up right now. They are so much fun. And then we have Sundered. Now, Sundered is a new game that falls into this kind of genre I've been seeing emerging more and more with indie titles, which is roguelike Metroidvanias. Games that take the Metroid aspects where you have a non-linear progression, you get different items and abilities that allow you to explore areas you couldn't reach before, but also take elements of roguelikes where you're constantly dying, unlocking new abilities, getting more powerful to try and survive your next playthrough, and each time you do so, while the overall map maintains the same kind of general design, individual rooms are constantly changing, so you never can actually take the exact same route you did one time before. This is coupled with beautiful visuals, and probably most interesting of all out of the game, this very bizarre plotline involving an ancient civilization, some kind of dark, maybe Cthulhu-like god, and how everything went horribly wrong way back when, and how you can escape now. Now, not only does the game make use of procedural generation to make each playthrough a little bit different, the game also has 3 different endings to watch. So all in all, that makes for an extremely replayable game that you could spend a lot of hours into, especially if Metroidvanias are your jam. Now, as I said earlier, this year has been a tremendously good year for games. And this next title is not only a great game for 20 bucks, but honestly, I would argue that it is one of the best games of this year, period. And that's Pyre. Pyre is the newest release from Supergiant Games, the same developer behind Bastion and Transistor. And just like with those last two games, something that I really love about the studio is that they maintain a similar art style, a similar excellent musical score, yet each game is extremely different. And in Pyre's case, I'm not even sure what genre to really typify it as. I guess the simplest way to do it is that it's a sports RPG visual novel. The progression of Pyre is very simple. You start off the story, enter your first sports match, win or lose, you move on, get to the next match, wash, rinse, repeat until the end. But that's what's really interesting about this game, is that losing is not a game over. Instead, every time you lose, there are plot implications for what's happening in the game's plotline. Now, hearing this, you might think that this is one of those games where, well, obviously I have to win every match if I want to get the best ending in the game, and if I lose a bunch, I'm going to get the bad ending. Not the case at all. There are merely simply different endings with tons of permutations based on which teams win, which teams lose, and none of them are really truly better than any other than how your own personal interpretation may be. Now, the branching plotline does help to keep the game really replayable, but honestly, what just keeps me hooked is that the actual core sports gameplay is really, really good. I mean, it's this interesting fusion of 3v3 sports, but also kind of RPG where each character has their own abilities they can unlock, different playstyles, different ways of dodging attacks, taking out enemies. It's just a really bizarre game that's hard to explain the rules to until you start playing it, and it is so much fun. And the best part is, even once you finish the game and you're done doing the story mode a bunch of times, the game still offers a multiplayer mode where you and your friends can play locally against each other using the myriad of characters that you've met across the game's story. Honestly, Supergiant Games is just a studio that has continued to pleasantly surprise me, and I cannot stress enough how good this game is and worth checking out. It is worth every penny of the $20 asking price.